All right. Hello, and welcome. So, we're just going to wait a couple moments for people to come in from the waiting room. But we are so excited to have you here today for our latest business essentials, which is titled Leverage Your Pre-Pitch Anxiety. So, we have a lot of good content to share today. Our guest speaker is Dr. Maia Young. So, she is from the Paul Merge School of Business in UC Irvine, so in California. So it is early in the morning or earlier in the morning compared to the East Coast where I live here in Philly. But again, we are so excited to have her here today to talk about this topic, which we feel is just relevant to a lot of individuals in the workplace. Even if you're not, she'll kind of talk about her research, but even if you're not an entrepreneur, a lot of this material can be translated into other aspects of your life. And making sure that you're able to really activate the anxiety instead of let it control you. So again, for those that are just showing up right now, welcome, welcome. We are so excited to have you here for our latest business essentials. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to let Professor Young just take it away, talk about her research, and then after that, I'm going to invite in Amy Orlov, who's the director of um, professional programs here at Forte, and she's going to lead a Q&A. So if you do have any questions for Professor Young, please put it in the Q&A box. That's primarily where we're going to be looking at to take those questions. But again, we're so excited to be here and are welcoming you all to this space. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. So Professor Young, please feel free.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be part of this webinar. And let me just hide this. Let me just try to hide my floating meeting controls. And here we go. All right. I'm going to assume, unless Alexia or Amy stops me, that everything's looking
Everything
good
looks
here.
great.
Okay, good. I'm excited to be here, and I wanted to thank everybody who's joining and those who are going to be watching on the recording for taking time to hear this message that I have for us today. And I know it might be a lunch hour, you're taking time out of your day, and I just wanted to give just the teaser for the upshot of today is that we can work with our anxiety before a big moment, like an entrepreneurial pitch. And you'll see that that's what the studies are about. But I do think we can generalize to other settings. But hopefully, what you'll take away from today is that we can acknowledge our negative emotions and work with them in a way that embraces them differently instead of trying to push them away, and that actually we can channel them to help us in our what we're trying to do at work. So that's the 2 minute message, and I wanted to share with you a little bit about how I got to this message and how I studied it with a prior doctoral student, Lily Ju, and a collaborator here at UCI Mirage School, Chris Bauman. So I've got a research team. I'm the one here in front of you today, and I'm so excited to share the research with you. Just as a kind of backdrop, I've been studying negative emotions and how they affect our decisions for a long time. And what's kind of been peeking out and from that research is this message that negative emotions aren't always bad for our decisions. And so that's kind of the backdrop of where I come from. I'm a social psychologist and I've been studying emotions, and I was kind of interested in how emotions can affect our decisions. And a while ago, it wasn't too long ago, that people thought, oh, if you feel negative emotions, it's going to have a negative impact on your decisions. If you feel positive, it's going to have a positive impact on your decisions. And we found a much more nuanced picture than that, actually. And not to go too far into it, but sometimes feeling angry at work can help if you need to push against something, if you need to resist something that's unfair, or if you need to really dig into something critically. Sometimes being angry can put us in a little bit of critical mode. So that's kind of the backdrop of where I got to this. That was before this current study that I'm going to show you. And what ended up happening is I started seeing more and more in the media, even some taglines. Here's a headline that's about people who consistently use acetaminophen to kind of dampen their pain. Understandable, people don't want to live with pain. But what they found is that, gosh, consistent use of acetaminophen actually also dampens our joy. So I started to see from my own research and from some other fields too, gosh, we are these emotions, they live together, the negative and the positive. And so anyway, I started to think about how emotions affect us at work even more. And specifically, I started getting interested in the entrepreneurial setting and these big emotions people might feel before an entrepreneurial pitch. And you probably know what show this is from. It's from Shark Tank. And I just wanted to show you one clip from it because I think it kind of exemplifies our worst nightmares about anxiety. And here we go.
I'm Jen.
And I'm Ned, and we are the founders of Greenbox.
We are here today to ask you for a $300,000 investment in exchange for a 10% equity stake in our company.
Sharks, based on our consumptions, oh my God.
It's pizza.
Don't worry. Take a breath.
Sorry, guys. Sharks, based on our research.
Jen, stop making him nervous.
Oh my God.
Don't worry, it's the most important moment in your life.
Shut up, Kevin.
Do you want to try
Why don't you
it?
reboot? Step
Ned,
back
if you want
and
it done
reboot.
right, get a woman to do it.
Reboot.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Hello, sharks. No.
I couldn't say it either.
Okay, next.
Wait, let's do this.
It's a nightmare, right? It's a nightmare to have this anxiety and for it to affect your performance. And I can see the wheels turning in these entrepreneurs' minds, like, oh my gosh, I'm nervous and I'm tanking. And it's hard. I've seen that clip several times, obviously, and it's just hard for me not to cringe at what's happening. And of course, we don't want that to be part of our pitches, our big presentations. And there was a really brilliant line of research out of Harvard by a researcher named Alison Wood Brooks, and she showed that we can reappraise pre-performance anxiety. Now, reappraising means thinking about the situation differently or thinking about your emotion differently to change your emotional experience. And what was so brilliant about this is that she basically said, oh, we can tell ourselves, you've probably maybe even heard of this research before, we can tell ourselves we're excited. We're not nervous, we're excited. And so we're kind of like shifting our interpretation of our racing heart and maybe our tightened voice. And we can say to ourselves, oh, we can use that, what we're getting, and we can say a different narrative, which is, okay, you're not anxious, you're excited. What's so cool about this is, again, this is a reappraisal, meaning reinterpreting the situation, reinterpreting your anxiety. And that is shown to outperform reappraising that anxiety as calmness. So thinking about it as I'm excited, I'm not calm because it's too hard. That's too big of a lie. Okay. Saying you're calm is too big of a lie. So instead of saying that, say I'm excited. So people actually do better in their speaking performances if they say they're excited. And it also helps because there's what they call arousal congruency, meaning you are heightened in your arousal, your heart's beating, and it just can help to pivot that little bit less extremely. And for somebody who has been performing my whole life, I was a synchronized swimmer growing up. I did it from age 8 until 22, and then other public speaking events, and now as a professor and sometimes keynote speaker, I get nervous too. And I started thinking, what if that doesn't work? What if I can't tell myself that lie, that I've actually been chronically anxious and long enough in my life that I'm familiar with it and I can't pivot like that? Is there another routine? Is there another pivot that I can make successfully? So not to take away from this prior research of you're excited, you're not anxious. But I needed something else. And so what I thought would be, and I mean, even Kevin O'Leary in that clip, you can see he's saying, don't worry, it's the most important moment of your life. That is a good joke because, it's hard to pivot in like really important, really big moments. So that's why that joke is there, because sometimes the moment really is big and sometimes you can't tell yourself that you're not anxious. So what I started to look at is the literature on entrepreneurial passion. Now, if you're not familiar with that, entrepreneurs are very psychologically attached to their ventures, and a lot of people have studied their passion for their work, and that involves two different things. First, really intense positive feelings about aspects of the entrepreneurship. It could be the product itself, or it could be problem solving, or it could be um, resilience, or it could be like being a kind of a pioneer in something, but it involves that physiological activation of positive feelings. Another part of it is the idea that this project is central to your identity somehow. Like you are invested, you are tied in with this either through your interest or through your personal experiences. And what I started to realize is that anxiety has similar features of that. First of all, anxiety is this emotional state of distress, right? Most of us don't want to feel anxious. It doesn't feel good, but we also feel this uncertainty about the future. And there are commonalities between the two. So there's the physiological activation for both. When you're anxious, you are activated, there's an arousal portion of it. And there's an appraisal for anxiety that this situation, there's something uncertain in this situation, but it's also personally relevant to you, is personally consequential. So I was thinking, okay, instead of trying to pivot from anxiety to excitement, what if you channeled that anxiety and reinterpreted it as a part and parcel of being passionate? So it's not that you're not anxious, it's you're anxious because you've been so passionate. I've worked my butt off for this opportunity. You might be saying to yourself, I've worked my butt off for this opportunity, and of course I'm anxious. It's because this is a big moment for me and I care so deeply about it. And lo and behold, research shows showing your passion is one huge part to impressing the audience members or the judges. So that's where I'm headed. Basically, this strategy that we've developed is called linking anxiety to passion, and it's a form of positive reappraisal. There's that word again, kind of reinterpreting the emotion or reinterpreting the situation. That means reinterpreting that anxiety as a reflection of the importance of that venture to you or the entrepreneur and your passion for the venture. So we're going to link the feeling of the anxiety with all the passion around. You see that it's an offshoot. That anxiety is the other side of the coin of your passion. So don't forget about your passion in those anxious moments. See it as its natural, like sibling, right? And so I want to show you some of how we studied this. I'm going to give you a quick overview of 3 empirical studies that we did. The first one was just a naturalistic look at how do people try to manage their anxiety in the moment. And we pulled people who were experienced entrepreneurs, and we asked them to recall the last time they did a pitch. These are people who have pitched on an average of like 9 times in their lives, and they're those who see themselves as their identities as being an entrepreneur. And we said, well, how did you try to manage your anxiety? And in this pie graph, you can see that a huge portion of people try to distract. And actually, this 49%, it looks less here because this is actually the sum total of all the strategies, and some people used more than one. But almost half of people said they try to distract by saying, like, I'm just going to focus on what I need to do. I'm going to look through my slide deck. I'm going to look through my pitch materials. I'm going to just don't think about it. Do not think about it. And I think it's because of that worry that you're going to it's going to take hold of you somehow and negatively affect your performance. Some people, of course, try a physiological approach, like I try to breathe deeply. Some people try to detach from the moment. They try to say, it's no big deal. They try to kind of play it cool. I'm just, I'm just trying to get, $1 million of funding. It's not too big a deal. And then some people do positive thinking, like, this idea is great. You got this. You've been working so hard, like positive self-talk. And some people do situation modification. Usually that looked like literally trying to find answers to things that they might be asked in the Q&A, and like just trying to increase their knowledge. Some people try to suppress their emotion, just like smile, look excited, ignore it again. And a very small sliver of people, as you can see up here, say, I just tried to accept it. I just try to allow myself to feel anxious. And it was just such a small portion of people who acknowledged the emotion and said, I just gonna let that be there. So that was very telling for us. And in the second study, we looked at a venture competition at two universities here in Southern California, and we did this over several rounds of their venture competitions where real money is on the line. A couple million dollars are on the line, and the students are pitching their products and services in several rounds of the competition. And our data collection was in the what we call semifinal round, where multiple people are pitching. And I wanted to show you a little bit of the process of that. So first we had, in this field survey, we had entrepreneurs who were surveyed 30 minutes before the pitch. And we had certain survey items asking, how are you dealing with the emotions that you're feeling right now? Of course, we had to include items on linking anxiety to passion. And we also had other emotion regulation techniques too that you saw on the first slide, like distraction, suppressing, and detaching. We also had other control variables, like how much experience have you had pitching and things like that. But the key thing is that, okay, so we've got some data on entrepreneurs, like how are you regulating your emotions? This is in the moment. They also had the pitch presentation. And finally, we have judges' ratings of their perceptions of their pitch. So the judges, of course, are meant to give their recommendation on how much funding this project should get. What's the potential for their funding? They also rated how much anxiety do you see in this presenter and how much passion do you see in the presenter? And we were,
Dr. Young, I'm
I,
just going to quickly interrupt you because something came in from the chat, and I know you can't
yeah.
see the chat right now.
Oh yeah.
So because of a lot of the text that are on your slides and how we have your face on front of the
Oh,
slides, we actually can't see some of them. So I don't know if
oh,
there's a way you can remove yourself again, because I know we talked
yes,
about
I
having
will
you on the
do that.
slides.
Yeah, sorry about that.
So thank you for the audience member who mentioned that, because we definitely want to make sure you're getting this content as
I'm going
needed.
to stop sharing and then I'm going to share again in a different mode. Sorry about
Okay.
that, everybody.
Yeah.
Okay, is that better?
Yeah, much better. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for bringing that to my attention. Okay, that was my first time using the function where I'm in front of the slides, and it's kind of hard because I can't see where I am in the slide. So it's really important that you gave me that feedback. Okay, so then just to kind of give you a little sense, so where we were is that we've got the entrepreneur data on how they're coping with the emotional experience. We've got the judges' ratings too. And just to give you a sneak peek of how these entrepreneurs, how they answered the question, or what questions they answered, the items were things like this. And you can see the top two here are linking anxiety to passion. I told myself that I'm anxious partly because I care about my venture so much. You can see there's some amount of like acceptance there, right? I tell myself that anxiety may reflect that I'm a passionate entrepreneur. And the other strategies are quite different. Like I tell myself that this pitch is not as important as it seems. That's a detachment strategy. And then distraction is I try to ignoring my anxiety. So people could fill these out any way they wanted to based on how they were feeling and how they were coping. And what we found is that people in that moment who were linking their anxiety to passion got more funding. They were recommended for more funding from the judges. And what was really interesting to us is that linking anxiety to passion actually didn't make people less anxious. I think that's really important because they're trying to work with their anxiety, but it's such an important moment. It's such a big moment. They actually weren't able to reduce their anxiety, but they added passion. They boosted up their passionate feelings and they were seen as more passionate entrepreneurs in the eyes of the judges, and that predicted them being recommended for more funding. So I really think there's a lesson there for us that we often, this narrative of this anxiety is no good. This anxiety has to be pushed in the corner and it's going to really negatively affect my performance. Actually, everybody was anxious. Everybody was trying to work with it, but it was remembering about the fact that that anxiety is there because you're passionate. That's what affected people's performance the most. Okay, that was study 2. I just have one more study, and I want to tell you that I think this one is a really important one, even though it's not in a naturalistic venture capital or venture competition setting. It's really important because I wanted to be able to show that I could teach people in a couple of minutes how to do this and see if like a couple minutes of training in this would affect their performance. So this study 3 was a study with upper division business communication students who were giving a final presentation, and they were asked to give a presentation on a social cause that they really care about. And so some of them, talked about the Boys and Girls Club or some animal rescue or other social causes that really the environment, social causes they really deeply care about. So there's still that like identity salience part. And they came into our laboratory and we asked them to do their pitch, right? This is the week before finals week. And we asked them to do their pitch. And we said, the best one will get $75 donation to the winner's cause. And we taught them how to link their anxiety to passion. They were randomly assigned to 2 conditions. One is linking anxiety to passion. And I wanted to tell you how we worked with it here. We said, if you feel nervous about the speech, remember that it can be a sign that you are passionate about and committed to your topic. When people personally care about their idea, they tend to feel anxious because the idea being evaluated is deeply meaningful to them. This was a written kind of instruction that they thought about, and we asked them to kind of ruminate on that for a little bit. This other condition was distraction, and said if you feel nervous about the speech, try to ignore your nervous feelings. Whenever any thoughts come up and make you feel anxious or doubtful about yourself, simply ignore them, direct your attention away. And then finally, they delivered that pitch in front of the experimenter who was standing there and in front of the camera. And they were told this is going to be judged. And then you're going to find out and a little later who gets the prize money. But this is, so we did is rate, we had people who were blind to the experimental condition, rate their speech for their perceived anxiety and perceived passion and how good the pitch was and whether it deserves to be funded. And what we found, this is going to show you the effects of the regulation strategy. Remember, there's the linking anxiety to passion in the yellow and the distraction condition in the blue. On whether they themselves said they experienced passion and whether the judges saw them as displaying passion. Here's their own experience. Okay, they said, I felt marginally more passion when I linked anxiety to passion than when I distracted myself. And here's the judges. They said, yes, I saw more passion out of these folks. They didn't know what the condition was than out of those folks. Okay, then of course we've got performance. Were they more persuasive if they linked anxiety to passion? Yes, they were, and they got more higher funding recommendations if they linked anxiety to passion compared to trying to distract yourself. So what would I say is the implications of these studies? I would say, number one, put your emotions in context. So don't forget that it's maybe the biggest moment of your life. That's okay, Kevin O'Leary. we can acknowledge those nerves as appropriate in the moment. And we don't have to shove them in the corner. We can acknowledge them. We can also check our assumptions about anxiety and performance. It might not be the case that anxiety is going to make for a worse performance. And finally, most importantly, maybe we can leverage that anxiety to make our passionate feelings about the project, about the result, we can make our passion salient by working with the anxiety. One thing I also think that at a group level we can do is we can broaden our tools and pitch trainings. A lot of the pitch trainings that we have now focus on content of the pitch and the structure of delivery, but we don't really address this key part, which is how are you conveying your enthusiasm and your passion? And I think there could be an element of that added to pitch trainings. It, of course, might be applied to other anxiety provoking settings, and I haven't studied that yet, but I think it could be something you do before a huge interview that's important to you, before other kind of presentations. And I'm excited to hear your ideas too about other applications. And I wanted to close with one other quote, and I don't know how many of you are tennis fans, but I saw my little tennis fan self merge with my research self this last month. And Madison Keys from the US, who's been a prodigy but never won a Grand Slam tournament, she won the Australian Open. And if you get a chance to listen to her speaking about her process of becoming a first-time Grand Slam champion, at an age where she's later age than people predicted her to. It's amazing to hear her insight. And I just wanted to share with you one of the many quotes that she's said during her interviews. She said, "I learned that I can be nervous and I can still play good tennis. Those things can live together. So I stopped fighting and trying to push away the feelings and pretending they aren't there, and just accepting them and really telling myself they're fine and totally normal to be there. Just kind of accepting it's going to be uncomfortable. You're going to be nervous, but you can still do it." I just got chills hearing her talk about that. And she talked about it with Andy Roddick and his podcast and her post-match interviews. I mean, she really hit the nail on the head, almost made me feel like I didn't need to do this this research, because she said it just so well. Anyway, I want to finally acknowledge my collaborators on this, and then I'll stop sharing so we can have a great discussion. But Lily Ju, this is her dissertation, and I was co-chair on that dissertation with Chris Bauman, and we're just thrilled to be able to share it with you today. Okay, let me stop my share. Okay.
Maya, that was amazing.
Oh, thank you, Amy.
That was amazing. By the way, that last quote made me think of my daughter. My daughter loves to say, two things can be true, right? So you can be nervous and you can still be, passionate, and you can perform well. That quote made me think about that. So I have a million questions for you.
First of all, though, I have to respond that, like, I love that she can say that at whatever age she is, because I feel like I just learned that like yesterday. So great on you and her that she's
she's 22, so it's not like she's young.
Well, that's still a lot earlier than I learned it.
It's not like she's young. So first of all, love this. Thank you so much. I have a million questions, and I'm assuming that the audience does too. Oh, I didn't even realize that there's a song. I guess two things. But anyway,
okay.
But I digress.
I love it.
But I'm
learning. Thank you so much.
Let me start with some questions, and then I am going to I'm going to open it up to the audience. So please start typing in your questions in the Q&A function. We already have one lined up. My first question for you is for those that are watching, not from an entrepreneurial hat, but maybe from a corporate hat, right? Mm-hmm. And you talked about like broaden pitch trainings, right? What can managers or what can HR people do to ease anxiety of when you're pitching to a new client, or when you're in a meeting and you're pitching to, like, maybe the managing director, are there tips that you could provide from that corporate lens?
Yeah, I really think we need to send better signals about professionalism. A lot of times we think professionalism is like kind of like poised, and but actually our joy, our excitement, our anxiety, all of that is part of being human. And when we send messages that managers or presenters need to be a certain way, then there becomes like stiffness, and there's like a box around it. And I really think that encouraging just that real, authentic acknowledgement of, yeah, you might be a little nervous, and kind of share, be able to let that shine through if that helps them to see that you're eager. That's not a message I've always heard from um, cultures.
Yeah, no, not at all. And actually, I think you answered my second question, because my second question was going to be, you definitely talked about the mindset of reframing, right, your anxiety as
Yeah.
passion. But how much do you physically acknowledge, or I'm sorry, verbally acknowledge that? Like, what would happen if you were giving a pitch, and you said, I mean, you didn't have to have that gentleman from Shark Tank tell
Yeah,
you he
yeah,
was
yeah.
nervous. We knew that.
Right.
But if you said, I'm a little anxious,
Mhm.
would you recommend that or no?
I'm not sure I would put it in those terms. I think I would say, I'd have to think about what would be authentic in the moment, but something a little bit more safe for me might be, I'm just pausing a bit at this big moment,
Okay.
or, oh, it means a lot to me to be here. Something like that, which conveys that you are feeling something and that this means a lot.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to reinforce the anxiety part. I want to reinforce the commitment part, and the fact that, why is it? Why are you anxious? It's because you are passionate. So, yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with figuring out, maybe even in advance. That's part of emotional intelligence, that you anticipate how you're going to feel, and then you anticipate how you might work with it and how you might acknowledge that. That's smart.
Yeah, love that.
Yeah.
And by the way, I have so many questions, but so does the audience. So I want to get to them before not. So we actually had one that came in really, really early.
Okay.
It said, are there any rituals that you would recommend before kind of the big conference or the big date that makes us anxious? Are any rituals that you think people could put into practice?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is part of that idea that we are so training ourselves rigidly to focus on um, minutia. So it's interesting when I talk to people who are preparing for something, they're like, well, I'm going to gesture like this when I say the title, and I'm going to look like this. And so I think there's um, this kind of like pull towards being more and more controlled in specific ways. And I think broadening your lens and saying, like, how I need to think deeply about the experience. And like part of my ritual might be practicing certain things, and I have to say the right keywords, like that's okay. But part of it also might be practicing a little bit of how you might feel and how you might work with your feelings. I think this project is really about, oh, you don't want to be blindsided by that. You want to know that you're going to feel some anxiety, and then you have to figure out how to reframe it that works for you.
Yeah, and you just made me think about we've done speaker trainings at Forte, and part of the key message is always be yourself, right? Don't try to, like, just because someone tells you that if you're enumerating something, you should show, 1, 2,
Yeah.
3. If that doesn't feel natural for you, that's
Yes.
not gonna work. And what I think I just heard you say is, don't follow a rule book on what good
Yes.
presenters look like.
Mhm.
Use
Yeah.
something that works for you.
Yeah, and I mean, just to give a little bit of a recent example, because this was recently posted on LinkedIn, and I got an email from a prior student, and he said to me in this message, he said, I I actually got so nervous that before my presentations that I took a medicine that would help with the nerves. And I found out that people didn't like my presentations as much when I was on this medicine because I was like more flat. And
Yeah.
he found that he actually kind of did better with experiencing the nerves. So there's this part of that's, I think, related to what you're saying about being authentic in the moment and bringing yourself to it.
Yeah. It's almost like the acetaminophen effect that you
Yes.
talked about at the
Yeah.
beginning of your
Yeah.
study. Well, actually, speaking of nerves, so Yara wrote in and said, my question is, what happens when we acknowledge the anxiety and excitement, but keep increasing them to the point where the fear causes us to fail, especially since this is the most important moment in our lifetime? Like, how can you calm those thoughts?
Yeah, so that's a really important question because I think that's part of our narrative, which is, oh, if I give it a foothold, what if it just takes over? And what happened in our study, and I think this is important to acknowledge, is that people were acknowledging their anxiety and they were making sense of it. So they were in one of the biggest moments of their lives. And I think working with it didn't diminish in this way, didn't diminish it, but it also didn't blow up either. It's almost as if they couldn't, they, I wouldn't say they couldn't feel more anxious, but they really were feeling very anxious. And I think that practicing this reappraisal, making sense of it, saying, yes, I feel anxious, everybody's feeling anxious. And I'm feeling anxious, and it's because of my commitment to this. It's because of my personal investment of time and resources, or in myself, or in this job, whatever it is. That's making sense of it, and that will help keep it there, but not let it take over.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And so you talked about, like, one of it is like, talking to yourself, saying, it's okay that I'm nervous, right? It's because I
Yeah.
care, because I'm passionate. And Kelly wants to know if you have recommendations for, like, additional affirmations you would recommend, that you could
Mhm.
say to yourself, additional phrases or keys.
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with so when I hear the word affirmation, or the phrase, affirmation as a concept, I think of like mantras, or I think of like, you can do this, or things that are calming phrases, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Um, but what I really want to turn our attention is just like kind of unconscious narratives that we have about our emotions. Like, if I feel anxious, it's going to show. And then maybe your narrative is, I'm going to look like a fraud. I'm going to look like I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to look like a novice. And those kind of narratives of pairing this anxiety with the perception that I'm incompetent, or I shouldn't be here, those need to be uncovered. Maybe you could write it out, like, what do I worry about? If I show my nerves, I worry what? Like, write that out. And I think it's really important to think about, investigate some of the recent research on stress and our thoughts about stress. Like, Kelly McGonigal's got a great TED Talk and book about the upside of stress. And she tries to get us to pivot our perception of stress. People who think that stress is going to be bad for their health, it is bad for your health, because the stress stresses you out, and you just kind of keep.
Yeah.
But if you think of stress as like, I'm working at my edge, I'm doing something new, look at me, I'm growing, I'm learning. That's a totally different narrative on stress. And what I'm talking about is a different narrative on anxiety. So, we have to kind of uncover that narrative that we might be saying to ourselves that we don't always say out loud.
Yeah. By the way, so I shared with you before this session started, I shared with you that I'm in yoga teacher training, right? And we always talk about getting to the edge, right? Take yourself up to that edge so that you're growing and learning and expanding and stretching, but that you're not pushing yourself to the point of discomfort, right? And that's physically, but also emotionally and mentally. So when you said that edge, I thought that was funny. I have to ask because, I represent Forte.
Yes.
Did you notice any difference between how men reacted to the prompts and women reacted to the prompts?
In the data, I did not. And actually, I thought it was interesting that men reported feeling just as anxious as women. I think there can be a common misunderstanding that like emotionality is just something that women have to control. And I do understand the perception that like we might get dinged more for that emotionality, but I didn't see any differences both on the judges' side when the judges the judge's gender, we tested that, and we also tested participant gender, and we didn't see gender effects in the study.
And I want to come back to what you just said, that the men were equally as nervous. I think sometimes women going into a situation do tend to think, I'm the only one feeling this way. And you said that before, acknowledging that if you're feeling this way, other people are too.
Yeah. Normalizing it is so important, saying like, everybody's trying for this money. Everybody probably has, or in this venture competition. But everybody's gunning for this job. People feel these feelings, and if you don't, that's not normal either. Someone who's so confident that they don't feel nervous, that's special in a different way. So don't feel that you're the special one for feeling nervous. Feel that someone else is special for not feeling nervous.
Yeah, I really like that. Like, yeah, I really like that way of thinking about it. I want to go back to something you said earlier and putting on my corporate hat again. You said it very early in your talk, and you said, negative emotions at work aren't always bad, right?
Yeah.
And you said feeling angry at work can sometimes be good. What does that healthy anger at work look like?
Well, okay. So just to give the short story on that, it's that some of our as you know from like decision making literature and decision making books that are out there, sometimes we get into like heuristics and biases that are just quick. We solve problems in a quick way, and sometimes we need more critical thinking. And anger makes us more critical, and anger makes us more. And I'm not saying it's good for interpersonal conflicts. Like, don't go into an interpersonal conflict at work with this. But if you have to critically analyze whether data are valid, or whether a source is valid, or whether a report is taking the right tack, sometimes being a little bit feeling a little angry and feeling a little frustrated can actually make you think more critically about what's in front of you. So that's what that looks like.
Okay. It was just you said sometimes it could be a good thing, and I was trying to put that in context.
Yeah, I mean, think about when you need to push back against something, and sometimes we just accept like, oh, that was last year's budget and this year's budget. Okay, we'll just kind of like make similar numbers. And sometimes you have to think like, wait, was that smart to spend the money that way? And maybe if you're feeling already a little bit angry, you can be willing to be a little bit more pushy again about what's in front of you, and don't just take last year's budget as an assumption.
Yeah.
That's one example.
Okay. So you talked about, maybe we can try to think about how we, prepare people for pitches a little bit differently. How have you incorporated that in your teachings now? I mean, not even just like it, not even teaching, say, an entrepreneurial class, but even just if you're asking someone to present. how have you incorporated this to be
Well,
very practical?
I mean, I would be a hypocrite if I said that I am not trying to teach myself at the same time, right? I need reminders. And actually what's interesting about this whole literature on reappraising and working with your emotions is that what they found is that you can get good at it in one situation, but you can still be bad at it in other situations. So it takes work to kind of think about how to work with the emotions specific to specific context or specific context. So like sometimes I have to think to myself, okay, this is a new audience or this is a new venue. And how am I thinking about my own presence in this talk or this webinar? I have to, I have to be kind of an example of it. And right now, this research is pretty fresh, and I'm excited to talk about it in my new classes and my next classes. But I haven't really incorporated it yet into my classes. Besides just trying to be more present and even more authentic than ever.
Yeah, that's amazing. Love it. So by the way, we were supposed to end at 12:45. And of course we're running late. I just want to put out one more call. Are there any questions? Any other questions? I know I see people dropping off, so I know people do have to go. I don't want to keep people past the time. I don't want to keep you past the time.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you. This is so relevant. Like I said, not just for budding entrepreneurs, but I think for the entrepreneurs that are joining us as well today, for the current students, for the prospective students. This was wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I just wanted to echo Amy's thoughts, and I'm sure many people in the comments are now putting it in as well. But thank you, Professor Young, so much for volunteering your time, sharing your expertise and knowledge with this community. Again, we're really excited to be able to host this series. And before we officially wrap up, I do want to quickly share some upcoming webinars as well as information on how to view this recording. So I know many of you are probably in the process of logging off. Don't worry about that. You can find more information later as far as how to get to the recording. But we actually, for this specific webinar series, we do post it on our website. So they're available on demand at fortefoundation.org. So under our professional development tab, you can just scroll down to the Business Essential Webinars, which is a part of our professional membership. So I did want to throw that out there. It usually takes a couple days to get the recording onto the website, but it will be available for people if you want to go back and review this content. Other things.
Thank you for all you do.
We are very happy to do this and just to kind of spread the knowledge for our community for sure. Just to make sure that everyone's getting the content they need. There are two big things I want to talk about as far as upcoming events. So the first one is a part of our affiliate membership. So anyone is able to actually attend this. And I feel like it's actually really well connected to today's content because we're talking about public speaking. So Ashley Lotzenheiser, she is a program manager here at Forte. So she's able to director, actually, I should say. So she'll be able to kind of share her expertise and her experience and some tips on how to be able to use some of this. So I apologize, my headphones just fell out. I was like, I'm not sure if it stopped working. But yeah, again, you can sign up on our website. It's posted there under our events section of the website. And then I feel like I have to mention, finally, International Women's Day is coming up. It is basically a Forte holiday, which is probably not surprising to many of you. And we are hosting a free virtual conference on Friday, March 7th. So it is on our website as well. So you're able to go ahead, register for it. We have a lot of good sessions and keynote speakers on topics that are really relevant to today's working professionals, especially people who identify as women. But really, it's open to everybody, including allies who are interested in partaking in this conversation. But yeah, I just wanted to throw it out there in case anybody is interested in what Forte is doing and you want to do more things or attend more things that we have to offer. So again, that's everything I wanted to share with people. So I'll stop sharing my screen. And I hope everyone has a great rest of the day. And feel free to reach out if you do have any questions. I know that Jennifer dropped some more information about how to stay connected to if you're interested as well. All right, so that's officially the end of the program. Again, thank you everyone for your time, and we hope to see you next time.
Bye. See you. Thank you.